Hello and welcome back to the channel. Happy winter time if you're here with me in the Northern Hemisphere. We have just made it past through the winter solstice, so the shortest day of the year, the longest night, very introspective energy, very healing, caretaking the nervous system, the kidneys. These are the meridians that we highlight in the winter season. So I know it's kind of an interesting navigation into the winter time. Like some of us live in places where we'll get snow as early as November, maybe even October. So still thinking of that winter energy, building the blood, going indoors, those cozy activities we've probably been practicing, or at least assimilating with that energy for the past few months. But we still have a few more months to go until the spring. So this is a beautiful chapter just to reassess what might be happening with the body. Some of us may be experiencing a difference in our diet in the holidays. And this is just a great time to reset the body and come away from what feels like maybe not the best routine or different foods that we've been eating, and coming back into connection with ourselves. And the winter time is just this beautiful season of rest. Our yoga practice takes on a little bit more of this quieting, grounding energy. We can emphasize the activation of Mula Bandha, really getting in touch with the pelvic floor and the kidneys, the energy that comes up from the soles of our feet. So this is a series, and this is the introduction. So we'll just be exploring, and perhaps if you're new to Meridian Yoga, learning about what these meridians are and why the energy is associated with the winter season. So when we talk about kidney jing, we're talking about the batteries of the body. The kidneys build our blood. So when we restore the kidneys, we're also practicing resetting the adrenal glands, just calming and quieting practices that bring our body out of fight or flight. So fight or flight relates to the bladder meridian. This is the back body myofascial pathway, activates the sympathetic nervous system and really brings the body into that protection mode. We want to protect the vital organs on the front side of the body, which is why the spine will cocoon itself forward. A lot of us may be unaware of how even forward head and neck posture can sometimes contribute negatively to this open and expressed front body that harmonizes the energy of the kidneys and their foundation for the heart. So we'll also be getting into some conversations, some practices about how supporting the kidneys has a beneficial effect on our heart as well. So we're thinking about the support for the organs and where they travel in the body. And if you've ever studied with Tom Myers, if you're familiar with Rolfing, structural integration, he has actually done some beautiful dissections of the body that really depict the meridian myofascial lines as they've been defined for thousands of years by the Chinese system. So we can go back and forth if you're more familiar with fascia, if you'd rather think of the body in terms of like the back body line, the superficial line, if that's your background area of study, that's brilliant. Otherwise, if you're more into TCM healing, maybe even the more spiritual, esoteric side, thinking about it in terms of Tantra, Taoism, that can also be really beneficial. And if you're a yogi and you've been practicing yoga for a long time and you've harnessed Mula Bandha, bringing the energy up through the chakras, maybe you're a Kundalini yogi, we could think about the chakras as those plexi, the plexuses in the body, the nerve bundles of energy that align and help support the different systems in the body: digestive, reproductive, heart and lungs, respiratory, and then of course getting up into the brain. So we live in a really exciting time. Science is really proving a lot of information that's been around for a really long time, ancient ways of healing. So it can be a beautiful exploration of your body learning to trust that some of maybe the more woo-woo or spiritual narratives concerning healing and yoga are actually quite real. Of course, it's not up to me to decide what's for you, what's best for you to believe in. Just through this practice, you'll naturally uncover what makes the most sense for you. I'm simply a guide, sharing some wisdom and some practices that have deeply helped me heal and revitalize my body. And with that, we always offer our energy, the support of this practice, to the collective benefit of all beings everywhere in all time, even animals. That's why we practice plant-based healing in this community, because we're all a part of the greater picture, and having compassion and benevolence for sentient beings, sentient life, is very important for the evolution of human consciousness. So without further ado, try to keep my little tangents as best as I can to a minimum so we can just really consolidate. We have a lot of information to get through, so we'll start with laying the foundation. So the winter meridians, back to kidney, jing, and the nervous system. The winter meridians are connected with the water element. So think about water as the foundation of all of life. You know, evolution has proven that we, at one time, were single-celled amoebas, just based in water, perhaps floating around, didn't even really have a lot of appendages growing out yet. We were just a cell floating in the water. Over time, life has evolved. Now we're in the stage of humanity. So it's a really interesting look back on how, yes, all of life has begun as the cell in water, but now everything's so evolved, but we still have this very important foundation in the body. The body is mainly water. You know, we're really influenced by the moon, the tides, the pull of the moon on our emotional landscape. Water is electromagnetic. It can control frequency. It can receive frequency. It can send frequency out. This is why we'll get into the power of healing with sound, these really amazing ways of being able to harness energy in the body's landscape. And of course, when we think about water, we think about flow, we think about being able to kind of trust and surrender to the greater path that's unfolding in our life. And that's really what the symbolic kidneys represent, the spiritual aspect of life, being able to trust, have faith in the greater picture. So, as we work on balance, if you like to imagine maybe the strand of DNA, the double helix, I like to picture that, the infinity symbol, everything coming into balance, yin and yang. So when we practice yoga, we're working on balancing these two energies, these two opposing forces that create all of life. So we have the yin aspect, which is the kidney meridians, and then we have the yang, which is the bladder. And if we think about the body in terms of yin and yang, the front body is yin, you know, back to the body wanting to protect the vital organs on the front. This is yin, the back body is yang. So when we think about balancing these vital energies, some of us might be overtaxing the kidneys. We might be in a constant sympathetic fight or flight. Our adrenals might be really tapped. You know, we've all probably encountered the term adrenal fatigue. So if you encounter more of that, trying to build the body's yin back up so that we're not just draining the batteries all the time. This is where winter energy can really be a source of support, you know, taking this season as more restful and practicing asanas, holding them for a longer period of time versus staying with that very yang external generative force in practice. So that's one idea, calming the body, balancing the body by building yin, drawing on the reservoir of support through the kidneys, through more introspective yoga posture, and also rest, periods of rest for the body, sleeping, if you can get a few extra hours of sleep in the winter time, and also eating to support the kidneys. So lots of dark leafy greens, more salt. Beans are a really great source of iron, protein, and just keeping in mind that the heavy load, the heavy diet that is sometimes tempting in the wintertime with holiday parties and the like, that can really burden the liver, which takes blood away from the kidneys. So think about it that way. If you want to stay in harmony, keep supporting the kidneys, also try not to overburden your liver. The other end of the spectrum is if you have a lot of yin, if you're very yin already, and you need to build that yang. So maybe you experience seasonal depression. Of course, this can be related to a variety of things. I'm not here to diagnose. I'm just here to present options to balance your energy based on your feelings any given day. If you feel really depleted, really depressed, obviously building your body's energy up so that you feel enlivened, you feel in touch with yourself. And that really goes back to the idea of the kidneys being the source of support for the heart. So depression relates more with the lung meridian, which we caretake in the autumn. But of course, all of these meridians are accessible year round. You don't just have to practice meridian yoga for your kidneys in the wintertime. This is something that we can address and work with year round. It's just really potent in the season that we're in the wintertime. So when we think about faith and joy and that relationship between kidney jing and our essence and supporting our heart, I like to think about the roots of a tree. So the kidney meridian travels down into our feet. So we want to think about the roots, the underground portion of the tree, the roots that go into the feet. And then we have the trunk as we emerge. Imagine like the earth is here, the pelvic bowl. The trunk of the tree is the torso, moving up into the lungs. We start, branching off into the leaves, the life, everything's reaching out. Maybe imagine the arms as an extension of the branches, the lung meridians and our thumbs, and then up through the crown of the head. There's a lot of symbolism around the lotus blooming, being the energy of the spine and of consciousness. So if that's helpful to think about the chakra system, the kidneys are represented by Muladhara, so the pelvic floor, Mula Bandha, pulling and lifting the energy up. And the greater picture, so like zooming out beyond just this chapter, just this season of winter, the greater idea or goal is to caretake our body this winter so that when spring comes, we really can feel that bloom, like we're properly rested, we've nourished ourselves, our energy feels full, charged, potently cocooned in the little seed. It's a time of germination so that when spring arrives, we have that focus to bloom. So the winter time is not necessarily a time to be really making a lot of changes or focusing on like really intense projects that require a lot of change, movement. It's very much staying put and trusting in the power of rest and introspection and bringing an idea to mind, to intuition for springtime to really allow it to grow. Of course, this isn't like a hard and fast set of rules. If you're moving in January, of course, it's your life. You can do that. Just try to give yourself extra time once you make that move and you're giving a lot of energy during that process to really rest and unwind. So these are the connections that we're making between the internal vital forces of the body and the forces of nature that govern all of life. So I hope that helps. Of course, we'll be discussing these ideas more. This is just an introduction to the meridian systems. Key takeaways, the main ideas: the kidneys are the battery pack. Kidneys build our blood. How do we support our kidneys? More rest and introspection, journaling, meditation, foods that contain a little bit more salt, beans, dark leafy greens, getting enough sleep. Those are all really powerful ways to caretake kidneys. Working with the bladder pathway and the back body, the nervous system, trusting, finding ways to calm yourself down. Don't always think that working more, overworking more is the best way. Sometimes it's simply resting and being. And working with the spine, like working with bandhas and lengthening the spine, working with the kidneys and the adrenals as a way to rebalance that relationship between sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic. And finally, one more idea, and then we'll come into our first little practice tutorial, is to keep the body warm, especially our feet. As you can see here, I have a really warm pair of socks on. I'm also sitting on my feet, keeping them warm, because the kidney meridian is beginning in the feet. It actually begins in the kidneys. The essence is in the kidneys, but the pathway begins in the soles of our feet. And it travels up this inner yin channel. It's sharing this territory with the liver and the spleen, and then it travels up. It's holding the kidneys in place, if you can imagine that, like little struts. Everything's lifting up. And then there's a superficial branch, so like right below the surface of the skin and the fat here on the front body, there's a branch that runs up through the organs to connect with the lungs and the heart. And we can harmonize with that energy through the conception vessel, which is the sea of yin, the sea of blood in the body. So it's like the front body has a spine. We can activate Mula Bandha, the pelvic floor, the energy lifting up, and then we're supporting the heart. We can imagine that. And then also the prana, the breath, as it moves the energy in relationship through the lungs. So how do we keep our feet warm? If we have varicose veins or anything like that, that could be a sign already that these meridians need nourishment. The inner yin, the liver, the kidney, and the spleen, everything through this region. And my favorite way to go deep into connection with healing the kidney meridian is with moxa. So go ahead and order a stick of moxa. I will link a few options in the description box for you to explore. Go ahead and order enough so that you have like some backup if you like to do it a lot, or if you want to give some away to your friends and family to work with. That can also be really beneficial.